This family set out to restore a riverside house abandoned for 20 years, turning it into a cozy countryside retreat. When they arrived, the building was nearly falling apart, rotted doors, cracked walls, and a leaking roof. Still, they chose to give it a second life. They hired a construction team and got started right after finalizing the plan with the foreman. The first step was clearing out all the old furniture and garbage. Anything reusable was kept, and the rest was burned as firewood. Once cleaned, the space looked surprisingly spacious. The old asbestos roof was removed and replaced with traditional tiles, and all the beams were replaced for safety. Overgrown bamboo around the house was cut back, instantly brightening up the courtyard. Next, they brought in an excavator to dig up tree roots and build a septic tank. One helpful tip they shared: if you're renting and renovating, clarify the land boundaries with the owner to avoid future disputes. Most of the original walls were cracked or didn't fit the new layout, so they demolished and rebuilt them. 2 bedrooms were kept, while the rest of the space became open for shared use. After 5 days of work, the main structure was finally completed. After tearing down most of the old structure, the walls were rebuilt. They kept 2 bedrooms and turned the rest of the space into open communal areas, perfect for hosting friends. To cut costs, they reused old bricks and filled gaps with leftover cement mix. They also built a septic tank, making sure it was well sealed to prevent any leaks. Even the neighbors' children joined in, helping out however they could. Next came the kitchen. They dug the foundation and planned for an open design with only a half wall. The roof would still use traditional small green tiles. The riverside breeze was beautiful but freezing, so they lit a fire in an old iron pot and roasted sweet potatoes for warmth before heading back to work. With the sun shining the next day, everyone's spirits lifted. They added large windows to the dining room for better light and a stronger structure. The office window was reused after some repairs. Outside the office, they designed a small open bar where guests could sit and relax. An unused corner was turned into a mini store. After 5 long days, the house frame was finally complete. They love vintage rural aesthetics, but building a house from scratch turned out far harder than expected. Tiling the 176 square meter roof would cost over 50,000 yuan in materials, not counting labor at 350 yuan per day for 10 days, far beyond their budget. They couldn't find cheaper workers, so used the contractor's carpenter but sourced the materials themselves. Only 3 workers came, so the family helped. Prep work involved stripping bark and leveling beams. They tried aging the wood by burning it slightly, aiming for that weathered look, but it took too long. Instead, they lightly charred the surface to prevent mold and insects, planning to paint later. Each log had to be selected, trimmed, and leveled carefully for the roof. It was tiring, but watching a neat pile of ready beams grow at the end of the day made it all feel worth it. After preparing the wood, they marked the measurements and used chalk lines as guides before starting to assemble the roof frame. Traditional tiled roofs rely on complex mortise and tenon joints, requiring various tools. Wooden beams were first cut and carefully shaped, with each joint precisely adjusted. After applying wood wax, the color appeared too light, so they darkened it to achieve the rustic charm they had envisioned. Once satisfied, they held a traditional beam raising ceremony, tying red strings and charms to the beams for protection and good fortune. Everyone pitched in to lift the heavy solid wood beams into place. Some stood on the walls to pull ropes while others pushed from below. A risky task requiring coordination and care. Any mistake could have serious consequences. As the roof beams went up, they added tall battens. The wind from the river was strong, but they pressed on. They also installed decorative eaves to guide rainwater and enhance the traditional look. The kitchen was open style with red brick columns and a wooden roof frame. They had hoped to use green clay tiles for the whole roof, but the price was too high. In the end, they used the tiles only for the main house and opted for thatch on the other sections. The thatch required OSB boards and a waterproof layer underneath. They used faux thatch, not for looks, but simply because it was cheap. With leftover wood, this family also built a small pavilion, perfect for a workshop or a place to rest in summer. From start to finish, the roofing process took about 10 days. Some walls were cracked, others untouched with moss creeping up the sides. The look was messy and uneven, so this family decided to replaster everything. They sprayed water for better adhesion, patched holes, and smoothed the surface. Locals joked the house had no pillars, but in small-town Sichuan, you just go with fate. Trying plastering themselves was harder than it looked. Messy, but oddly satisfying. With windows and doors delivered, they leveled the floors next, clearing debris, spreading mortar, and finishing with a smoothing machine. Once dry, the rooms would finally take shape. While the carpenters worked, this family went searching for old-style clay tiles. New ones looked too modern, but luckily they found second-hand tiles made with traditional methods, 14,000 pieces for 5,600 yuan. Although time-consuming, these tiles held childhood memories, so they laid them one by one across the roof. Mortar was used to seal gaps and keep them in place. A curved eave was added for style, and the tiles were stacked from bottom to top, neat and secure. They used faux thatch on the side roofs, which turned out better than expected. With tiles and thatch combined, the house now had layers of texture and charm. After 2 months and 80,000 yuan, this forgotten courtyard was coming back to life. They're wrapping up the final phase of our courtyard renovation, mainly paving the ground and building the outdoor stove. For the paving, they used a mix of stone slabs and brick sheets, flexible and perfect for future gardening. 5 tons of stone only cost us around 1,700 RMB. They laid sand and geotextile underneath to keep the ground level, and filled large gaps with smaller stones. The old pomelo tree got a new tile border, and they're planning to graft it in spring. For the walls, they used red bricks and bamboo, affordable and good-looking. While they went to buy bamboo, the workers finished paving the corridor and building the wall. One mistake, the wall was too tall, so we had to remove a layer. They also built a traditional-style gate. The firewood stove was made from bricks filled with rubble and topped with white tiles. It needs 2 days to dry before use. They bought 2 iron woks and a basin, total cost 130 RMB, and cooked their first meal on the new stove. Dumplings or rice balls. What would you choose? Renovating on an 80,000 RMB budget meant doing almost everything themselves. Before they could start painting, they had to apply a layer of wall primer, an essential step they almost overlooked. The primer helped seal the surface, reduce dust, and prevent future peeling or flaking. It was especially important for their mix of old and newly plastered walls. Some areas were rough and uneven, making the job harder than expected. They had no prior experience but followed online tutorials, slowly figuring things out as they went. It's not perfect, but it's home, and they poured their heart into every corner. After finishing the primer, they started rolling on white paint. The first coat looked uneven, but the second coat made a noticeable difference. Indoors got 2 coats, outdoors just 1. The process was exhausting but oddly therapeutic. The courtyard looked small, but painting it took real effort. After an entire day, they had only finished the rooms. With more friends joining in, they pushed to finish the remaining work. Even the red brick workshop got painted white, and it actually looked quite nice. For tight corners, they used small brushes. It's not perfect, but it's home, man. They poured their heart into every corner. The family tackled one of the final tasks, the stained concrete floors. Sanding kicked up too much dust, so they bought a 260 RMB bucket of primer instead. After cleaning the floors and taping the edges, they thinned the thick primer with solvent, stirred it well, and began painting. They brushed the edges first, then rolled the rest. With improved skills, they worked faster, though the strong smell meant masks and open windows were a must. The hard renovation phase of the courtyard was finally complete. It wasn't perfect, but every tile and every plant had their effort behind it. Every corner held meaning. Now it was time for soft furnishings and decoration. The little courtyard was ready for its next transformation.